minutes.
Have you ever been?
This was with the school. Senior golf.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this regularly scheduled meeting of the Wethersfield Board of Education. Tonight is Tuesday, October 10th, 2023. We're in the Town Hall chambers. Ellen, can we have roll call, please?
Thank you, Chairman Carey. Good evening, everyone. Mrs. DeRoberts?
Here.
Mrs. Drew?
Here.
Mrs. Granado? Present. Mr. Healy?
Here.
Mr. Lacavoli?
Here.
Dr. Regan Lefebvre?
Here.
Mr. Riley?
Here.
Vice Chair, Mr. Cassio?
Present.
Chairman, Mr. Carey?
Here.
And Wethersfield High School Student Representative, Ms. Mary Dunn.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. If we could stand and have the pledge led by Mr. Bilbo. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There is no student staff recognition tonight, correct? Correct. All right, moving on to board comments. So I'd like to start by saying last week the board met. We had a special board meeting to start discussing the next steps in the referendum and the direction we were taking. So we are in the process of putting together a committee formed of board members, public participants, and some town councilors to help guide the direction of moving our schools into a better direction. So Ms. Granado and I are working on that. And we also had colleagues there to answer some questions. They actually got back to us yesterday with the price for what we need to do going forward. And that comes in at about $150,000 just to continue to work to get ready for the next referendum. So the committee that we put together is going to have a large amount of work to do, but we look forward to it, and we look forward to having a lot more public participation. So we have learned from our mistakes of the past and plan on fixing it. So I just want to make everyone aware of that. And that meeting was last week, and hopefully our committee meetings will start in a week or two. Any other board members?
For comment? Okay.
Yes, comments. Yeah, board comment. Yes, Dr. Regan Lefebvre.
Thank you very much. I'm glad that the board leadership wants to get more public involvement in this schools process, but I am concerned about the special board meeting that was held last week because I've heard from constituents that there was not sufficient public notification for this meeting. I know for the board itself, we found out on Friday the 29th that we were meeting on October 3rd, which is a Tuesday. We don't have any minutes on the board website, on the town website, and then I realized actually we don't have any 2023 minutes on the town website or the Board of Ed website. We all know they exist. We know Ellen took the minutes, we've approved them in these meetings, and they haven't actually been uploaded to the website. So our schools urgently need help. We all know this. But at the same time, less haste, more speed. We need to be deliberate. I've been saying for a long time that transparency is not the same as outreach, and I think in this occasion we didn't even have full transparency. So I don't have much more time left on the board, and so I won't be involved in these next steps moving forward. I encourage the board to continue to try to bring the public in, but we absolutely have to up our game in terms of communicating, because if we can't even find out ahead of time that there's going to be a meeting with, say, a week's notice, then people can't plan to be there. I know a lot of concerned parents and concerned citizens would have liked to be in attendance or would like to know how it went. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Roberts.
I've heard from some members of the community also, and they've had some concerns about not knowing or not having communication about the meeting, the special meeting, and also when they would ask me about what we talked about, and I tried to answer their questions about the committee and how it would be formed and so on, I realized that we need more clarity, and we need to communicate that clarity a little better to the public so they'll understand better how this is happening.
Anyone else? Yep.
Mine on a different subject here, but I agree with my colleagues. But on Wednesday, September 20th, the Wethersfield Education Foundation had their first meeting for the 23-24 school year. Fundraising and grant awards will be a focus again as the foundation continues their mission of enriching and enhancing the curriculum for all our schools. Please watch, and I'm going to do my own show and tell, for the Wethersfield Education Foundation brochure in our local businesses and restaurants. And the brochure was made by Joanne Campbell, who is a wonderful tech teacher at our Wethersfield High School, so I thank her. I just wanted to mention to the schools out there that we do enjoy the Friday updates. This week we had one from Hamler, we had Highcrest, we had Silas Deane Middle School. It gives us a little window into what's going on, and I so appreciate it, and I think the rest of us do too. Also, I think it's National Administrators Month, week, day. You get more than a day, I hope. So congratulations to all of our administrators, and have a wonderful month of October.
John?
Thank you, Chuck. After the last board meeting, I received a phone call from a community member, very excited to hear the facilities report in the event that he has a construction company, and they're always looking for projects to do around the community with no charge. So they were looking to see whether or not they can come in and help some small renovations, small concerns that maybe the town can't handle. We did discuss the option, maybe possibly through a PTO or the Silas Middle School program or the high school program, getting involved in that direction. But also, we talked about the liability. So I wondered if the community, the superintendent can check into that so that we can, because many families out there have a skill that they'd like to come into the community, into the schools to help us with some of the smaller projects. So that might be a way to look at different options to get some of our concerns taken care of. And with regards to the next steps in the facilities committee and the schools, I think it's exciting. We got to look to the future. And yes, there's a lot of bumps in the road that we're going to have. May not know the certain date when the meeting's going to be, but the meeting was held. And guideline was given for our schools, and Bobby Granado and Chuck Carey are going to work together to put a committee together. So I think that's the next step. A committee of the community is going to be put together. So that's the excitement. And there's always negative to every excitement. But let's look at the positive of what we're doing and keep it going. Good luck.
Thank you. Ms. Drew?
I just wanted to say how appreciative I was that we started the process. I felt like it was a good meeting. And then also, I challenge each one of our board members. We are representatives to each of the PTOs for each of our schools, and we have a responsibility ourselves to actually attend those meetings to learn from them as well, and the parents, because they come to us with a lot of ideas. I attended the Highcrest PTO after the meeting. We had a very lively and honest and open discussion, and they came back with a lot of suggestions, ideas, and I appreciated that, and I think that's something that us as members should start attending. So thank you.
Thank you. Mary, do you have anything there you want to add?
Yeah, I have an update.
Perfect.
So the first quarter of this school year is moving along. There's a lot going on. In order to aid students in preparing for college, school counseling has been hosting college visits. So far, representatives from UConn, the Savannah College of Art and Design, and CCSU, among other schools, have visited to share information to interested students. Last Thursday's football game against Windsor was a blowout in memory of Austin Stefano, a beloved WHS graduate who we sadly lost this past summer. Senior night will be next Friday against Middletown, where there will be performances from the dance team, band, and cheerleading. Also last Thursday, girls volleyball won their last match against Enfield, the 5th in a 5-match winning streak. Our weekly Tuesday Weekconnects have been effective in helping students get accustomed to the new school year. To help freshmen adjust, senior Eagle Crew members have been assisting freshman Weekconnects. Other roles of the Eagle Crew have been peer tutoring and leading tours for the new students. Academic study halls have also helped ease the process into the new school year. These more structured study halls provide extra academic support like study habits and one-on-one teacher guidance. The first quarter is almost over, coming to a close on November 1st, and there's a lot more to look forward to.
Thank you. Thank you for the update. Mr. Riley?
I just wanted to update everyone on a couple things. The band competition was on September 30th, and that was at Rocky Hill High School. My understanding is that's their biggest fundraiser of the entire school year for them. So that was very interesting to see. On October 2nd, there was the Career Advisory Board meeting. The date for the career fair is set for April 23rd, 2024, and there's an employer breakfast May 23rd of 2024. In addition to that, the board just discussed what the focus should be. I know they're trying to get some student, folks on the board. They're going to expand and connect with the local business community, and they're trying to grow the internship program in the career fair. And also on October 4th was the special education PTO meeting that I attended. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, moving on to motion to approve minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the September 26, 2023 meeting?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any comments, discussions? Seeing none, with a motion and second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
So noted.
Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to public comment. Anyone in the public wishing to make comment, come to the podium, state your name, your address, and you have 5 minutes. Seeing none, public comment is closed. Communications, Mr. Emmett.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. Good evening, everyone. I have some good news with regard to September attendance for the students of the Wethersfield Public Schools. The district student attendance for September came in at 96.5%. This past September. This represents a 1% increase compared to last September. I will tell you, my friends in the freshman class had the lowest attendance for September. So freshman students, just a reminder that being in class counts, and it is important to start off strong because you're looking to get those credits to graduate 4 years down the road. So again, good news on the attendance front. I will tell you also, we continue to monitor respiratory illnesses. They are on the rise in the Central Connecticut Health District. While we've seen cases across the district, we have fortunately not seen any large concentration of illness. Elder Marcelinas, who serves as our nurse supervisor, has met with the nurse supervisors from the other 3 CCHD towns. We have a clear picture of what we are looking for in terms of any type of concentration that we report to the health district, as well as the State Department of Public Health. So thus far, we're going to continue to get the message out of good hand hygiene. That's a big one. Staying home if you're sick, again, if you have symptoms, and obviously making sure that you are getting vaccinated. Again, vaccinations are a choice. They are not a mandate, but it is something that both the Department of Public Health and the Central Connecticut Health District have encouraged. A couple of other items this evening. You have before you several motions for field trips. We have Sue Coco here. She is plotting some additional trips in the future for our students at Wethersfield High School. She'll be talking about those. We have our annual student achievement presentation this evening, and I'll also be providing you with an update on the annual class size report. We just had our October 1st date come and go, so we have some updates in terms of class size. And then finally, as Mary mentioned, there's a lot going on at the high school. There's a lot going on across the district. It is a very busy time of year. So again, we are hopeful that our students are well-rested. They are ready to learn. We are getting, again, exceptional participation in the breakfast and lunch program. We are extraordinarily proud of the opportunity to be able to provide free breakfast and lunch this year, so kudos to the business office for helping to support that, and again, for all of our parents and students for their participation. Mrs. Granado mentioned it is National Principals Month. We do have several principals in attendance this evening. to provide support with any questions you may have on the data presentation. Again, I can't say enough for the hard work that our principals do. They work 24/7. They ensure a safe learning environment and make sure that our kids are getting the best. And then again, last but not least, obviously, you are all aware of what's going on in the world over the course of the weekend. You know, for us, again, we want to remain committed to making sure that we have a safe and healthy learning environment for all of our students, no matter what walk of life they come from, no matter what religion they practice, no matter what their color or their orientation. So we're going to continue to be committed to making sure that our school environments are safe, healthy, and nurturing for all of our students. And with that, that's communications.
Thank you, Mr. Emmett. Moving on to action items, Mr. Kessler, will you have a motion for us?
Yes, I do. I was told anyone that makes this motion gets to go. So, move that the Wethersfield Board of Education approve the domestic school field trip request for California in June 2024.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Emmett, discussion?
Yes, we have Ms. Coco out in the audience. Ms. Coco, can you come up and just provide a little bit of background? I would imagine you're overseeing all three of these?
No, I'm not. I'm doing California and Japan, and Patty McGrath is going to do Italy.
Perfect.
So California's this coming summer. I had a student who had approached me at the end of last year and said, can we do something domestic? And I said, pitch it and we'll see what goes on. So she chose California, and we have 20 kids going. So it was popular, and parents were very happy because it was a lower price point, and they didn't have to, a lot of them were saying, it's a no-brainer, we don't have to get passports, a little easier. We fly right out of Bradley. So going to LA and San Francisco, and we're all very excited about it. The kids are really pumped about it. Then in the spring of 2025 is when Patty will be taking a group of kids to Florence, Rome, and Venice. And it's based on Italian, but she is offering it to the entire school. And then in summer of 2025, we'll be going to Japan. So we have an 11 or 12-day trip going to Japan. That's already full. We rolled that out in the spring, so we give families a longer time to pay it off. And they do have incentives for scholarships if they want to apply to the company, and we're looking at other ways to also give a little extra incentives. So a lot of interest in the student trips, and going well.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Coco? All right, so then we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Mr. Kessler, next motion.
Yes, move that the Wethersfield Board of Education approve the international school field trip request for Japan, summer of 2025.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Mr. Kessler.
And my third vacation trip will be moved that the Wethersfield Board of Education approve the international school field trip request for Italy in the summer of 2025.
Spring.
Summer.
That definitely says summer. Is it summer or spring, Italy?
It's spring.
Spring.
So it'll be spring break.
All right. So we
Be busy then.
we have a second.
Second.
I think spring is better for me.
Any questions, comments?
I thought you were.
Yes, Dr. Regan LaFave.
I'm just particularly glad that this is integrated with their learning of Italian language.
Excellent. Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, motion and second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Coco. Thank you. Moving on to reports and discussion items. Board members, check your packet. We are trying to get some committee meetings in the next couple of weeks. Make sure you let Deane know if you can make it as soon as possible. I know we're trying to make sure we have student programs and services quorum, an HR quorum, and a special board retreat quorum to finish up our work that we started last spring. Mr. Emmett, 2023 Student Achievement Presentation.
Yes, members of our curriculum team will be coming forward to provide our annual student achievement presentation.
You were kind of humorous.
Sally Stoley, Dawn Campbell, and Dr. Christina Slayton.
Good evening, board members, members of the public. We are happy to be here this evening to talk about our student achievement presentation from the 22-23 school year. So before we get into some of our standardized assessment scores, I want to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about the demographics in our community as we reflect on where we've been. It's also a great time to share with you or remind you a little bit about our community and look at some data that's really quite interesting. So what can we learn about our community? So this is a little bit of a snapshot back from June of last summer. These numbers include pre-K and their WTA. Our students of color, our white students, so we have about 35% of our student population that identify as students of color. This includes students that identify as Black, Hispanic, Latino, Asian, Black, or African American and American Indian or Alaskan Native. You'll see that about 1/3 of our population represents these diverse groups. We exit about 50 students each year from the English Language Learner Program, and we still had close to 400 English language learners that we serve across all our schools. We have close to 600 special education students, and about 20% of our students qualify for free reduced meals. However, since we've been providing free meals to all students, we know this number is really low. We know it would be much higher should parents or guardians be required to complete an application for free or reduced meals. So it really underestimates the food insecurity across our district. And last year we had 22 students that were homeless. As you can see from this slide, the enrollment for Wethersfield Public Schools has been fairly steady. We see statewide most towns seeing a downward trend in enrollment, and a few towns seeing an increase depending upon their particular situation. While district enrollment is fairly steady, school-based enrollment has shifted. This slide shows you a 5-year enrollment comparison. You'll see that Emerson Williams, Highcrest, and Silas Deane are up in enrollment compared to 5 years ago. Across the district, you'll also see an upward trend in the number of students in the high needs subgroup. So again, our high needs subgroup is made up of students that qualify for free reduced meals, students with disabilities, and English language learners. And we see an upward trend in each of the 3 individual groups that we'll look at shortly. You might ask, what is that jump in 2018? That is a year that there was an auto-certification process for families in Medicaid automatically qualify for free and reduced meals. So you can see how a lot of families weren't filling out all the applications. This chart shows a number of students in each high needs subgroup at each school as of June 2023. So you can look at the diversity in both count and percentage of different subgroups at our schools. And as I mentioned, our English language learner population continues to grow, 392 students as of a week ago. We have 4 students that provide bilingual services to identified students. That's Charles Wright, Emerson, Highcrest, and Wethersfield High School. All 4 schools provide some bilingual services in Spanish. The state and national trend continues to predict large increases in multilingual learners. This graph does not include the multilingual learners who have exited from the program each year. So again, we estimate about 40 to 50 students exit each year. We include those based upon our registration information. We estimate that 1 in 3 families in Wethersfield have an influence of another language in their home that impacts their learning profile. The top languages spoken by students in the English Language Learner Program, the most common, Spanish, Albanian, Bosnian, Turkish, and on the list this year is Vietnamese. So a growing Vietnamese population.
What was that last one? I'm sorry.
Vietnamese.
Oh.
Yeah. So again, a shifting and changing population. Wethersfield Public Schools has over 1,000 students that qualify for free and reduced meals. Again, you'll see that bump in 2018 when students or families were automatically certified through the Medicaid program. And again, we know these numbers really could be much larger than they are. We also continue to see an increased trend in the number of students in special education. Anecdotally, our residence officer and other people have shared that many parents consider Wethersfield home due to the strong inclusive programming we offer students for students with disabilities. This graph visually shows you the number of special education students in each school. Each circle actually represents a student. So it's ordered from the largest number of students to the smallest number of students per school. This graph demonstrates one of the greatest assets of our community, our diversity of our students, the racial and ethnic or cultural diversity. And this chart shows the number of students who have identified in each of the following racial or ethnic groups. Increasing attendance and decreasing the number of students that are chronically absent was a district priority last year and continues to be a priority for this year. You'll see the number of students chronically absent drop last year in 5 of the 7 schools, and chronic absence is defined as missing 10% or greater of the total number of school days enrolled during the school year for any reason. One other snapshot of data I want to share with you is a little bit about mental health. Mental health and well-being is also a priority of the district and this Board of Education. For a grant, we looked at data specific to mental health support. We found that approximately 25% of one school received mental health services. Out of this 25%, approximately half of these students received services through an IEP or a 504 plan. Approximately half of these students were general education students in need of mental health supports. And the school also noted that there were additional students receiving support outside of school and that they still had some unmet need during the school day to support students. So at this time, I'm going to turn the presentation over to the elementary instructional supervisor, Mrs. Dawn Campbell.
Good evening. The Smart and Balanced assessment is comprised of 1 English Language Arts and 2 math subtests. The English Language Arts assessment score is composed of 4 claims: reading, writing, listening, and research and inquiry. Students' overall scores are reported at 4 different levels. Tonight's presentation will focus primarily on students in levels 3 and 4 who have met or exceeded the achievement standard. During the fall of 2020-2021, the state of Connecticut did not release statewide aggregate achievement data for comparison. Instead, they encouraged districts to consider the spring 2021 assessment as baseline data to be used to compare future results. That is what you will see here tonight. This graph shows the blue bars representing the percent of Wethersfield students scoring at levels 3 and 4 for the spring ELA ASPEC assessment for 2021, 22, and 23. The red bars represent the state data for 2022 and 23. Here we see that broken down by grade level, with the red bar representing the state for the most recent assessment. And here we can see the percentage of students in each of our 6 schools year over year compared to both the district and state averages on the left. On this slide, we can see the percentage of students in each of our on this slide, we can see the distribution of proficiency levels across all grades 3 through 8 for the English Language Arts Smarter Balanced assessment here in Wethersfield. The next few slides show the percentage of students meeting the academic standard in 21, 22, and 23 for each grade broken out by school. The 2 bars to the right of the schools is the state average for that grade level in the 22 and 23 school years. This is grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, and grades 7 and 8. Related to our district priority number 3 of equity, we've committed to disaggregating data by different subgroups, inclusive of race and ethnicity. This data supports the continued work of the district's focus on the priority of equity and culturally responsive teaching. We continue to focus on strategies to narrow this gap. The high needs designation, as Mrs. DeSholi shared, includes any student who qualifies to receive free or reduced price meals, English learners, and students with disabilities. Students who are not in a high needs group are achieving at a much higher rate than those in high needs groups. We also continue to focus on strategies that will help us narrow this gap. The next few slides will address the Smarter Balanced math assessment. Similar to language arts, the math assessment score is composed of 4 claims: concepts and procedures, problem solving, communicating reasoning, and modeling and data analysis. This graph shows the percentage of students in grades 3 through 8 scoring at levels 3 and 4 in math over the past 3 years, comparing it to the state percentages for the last 2. This slide shows Here we see that broken down by grade level, with the red bar representing the state for the most recent assessment. Here we can see that in grades 3, 4, and 7, there was an increase in the percentage of students at levels 3 and 4 from 2022 to 2023, with most grades remaining higher than our baseline in 2021. Here we see the percentage of students in each of our 6 schools year over year compared to the district and state averages to the left. And here you can see the proficiency level distribution of students in grades 3 through 8 for the Smarter Balanced math assessment. The next few graphs show the percentage of students meeting academic standard in 2021, 22, and 23 for each grade broken out by school. Again, the 2 bars to the far right represent the state average for 2022 and 23. This is grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, and grades 7 and 8. Again, we are committed to disaggregating our data. As you can see here, the gap indicated in the area of English language arts is similarly reflected in our math data. And when we look at our students in the high needs and non-high needs groups, that gap is also similar to that of ELA. The state of Connecticut uses a growth model as a metric for evaluating school district success. Each student has an individual growth target based on their achievement or proficiency on the previous year's assessment. The state scores district's performance with regard to growth in 2 ways. The growth rate, which is the percentage of students who've met their respective growth target, and the percentage of growth target achieved, which is the average percentage of growth targets achieved by all students. This slide shows how Wethersfield's growth in blue compares to that of the state in red for English language arts for students in grades 4 through 8. Grade 3 is not included in the growth metrics, as this is the first time that they're taking the assessment.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Can you look at this cohort, like as a cohort? So if we took grade 4, it's 63% and 22, and then in theory, most of the same kids in grade 5 would be 50%, 60%, right?
You can look at it as a rough cohort. They are not a matched cohort. So it's not a
The
kid.
state gives it both ways, right? The site gives you rough and matched, doesn't it? No?
This is the public data,
Right.
so it's not matched.
Have we looked at cohort data?
Yes. At the individual school level, we've been looking at it for goal-setting purposes. But we want to make sure that we're also looking at how the kids that were sitting in front of us at the time were performing, given the instruction that we provided.
Okay, thank you.
This is the slide that shows Wethersfield's growth for math compared to the state in red. Here you can see our growth metrics broken out by school for ELA. And for math.
So can I have a question?
Yes.
Does that mean that it's like Charles Wright has grown 49%, or is that just 49%?
So the growth rate is the percentage of students who have met their growth target. So in 2022, 49% of students met their growth target. In 2023, that was 51% of those students.
Okay.
Would the growth target be a number, a score?
It is. It's a target of scale score points that they're expected to increase based on their existing scale score. There's a formula that the state uses to provide that.
And since we're on this math growth, I just want to question, who gives us these numbers? I'm just hoping that the teachers aren't sitting there trying to figure all this out. Comes to us through the SBAC, okay. I would just like to know, so individual children, it shows their growth rate.
Yes.
Okay.
We can.
So if you look at this data, Charles Wright is the only one that showed an increase in growth rate?
For their, yes, they have an increased growth rate this year over last year.
It might have been this one. And then if you go back to
SDMS.
language arts, I believe it's only Charles Wright for elementary school. So is that something we're looking at? Why there's a disparity in our elementary schools and one school's showing growth and the others aren't?
Yes, most definitely.
Okay.
Dr. Christina Zlayton will be taking things from here to discuss our next generation science assessment.
Good evening. The Next Generation Science Assessment, or Standards, or NGSS, the NGSS assessment is administered in grades 5, 8, and 11. It measures student proficiency in rigorous science concepts and skills. Assessment items begin with real-world phenomena that engage students in authentic science experiences or engineering design challenges. Here we can see student performance on the NGSS assessment in grade 5 over the last 3 years. And student performance in grade 8. And student performance in grade 11, again over the last 3 years. We now present data from the Last Links assessment. The Last Links assessment measures English language proficiency among English learners. It assesses academic and social English skills in the domains of speaking, listening, reading, and writing. Students are scored in each domain on a scale from 1 to 5. They reach mastery and exit the EL program after earning scores of 4 or 5 in reading, writing, and overall. Here you can see the percentage of students meeting mastery on the Last Links assessments and exiting EL services by school in 2022-2023. Wethersfield's English learners have continued their growth in literacy and oral proficiency. Next, we turn to SAT data from the SAT School Day Administration. The SAT is a measure of students' proficiency in thinking, problem solving, and communication, and their readiness for post-secondary learning. While the SAT is typically taken by high school juniors and seniors, only 11th grade students participate in the SAT School Day Administration. The test reports scores in 2 domains, evidence-based reading and writing, and math. We first present the mean domain and total scores for the 2022-2023 school year and their comparison with scores from the previous year. These district scores remain slightly above the state average. Now we share outcomes from last year's AP testing. Advanced placement or AP classes are equivalent to a first-year college course but are taken in a high school setting. Students earn scores on AP assessments on a scale from 1 to 5. Here you can see the 3-year comparison of the number of students tested in AP courses, the number of exams taken, and the percentage of students with scores of 3 or higher. Similarly, we have data from our early college experience, or ECE courses at Wethersfield High School. ECE courses are offered in collaboration with the University of Connecticut and allow students to earn both high school and college credit. Wethersfield High School increased the total enrollment in ECE in 2021-22 and maintained comparable numbers last year. Finally, we share some additional indicators of student achievement at the secondary level. The Connecticut State Seal of Biliteracy was established to recognize public high school graduates who have attained a level of proficiency in English and 1 or more other languages. This award is designed to recognize students who work to become bilingual and biliterate in preparation for a multicultural, multilingual world. Here you can see a comparison of the number of students taking and passing Seal of Biliteracy exams, as well as the languages in which these exams were taken. Next, we share our 4-year adjusted cohort graduation rate for the last 5 years for which data are available. This measure reflects the percentage of first-time 9th graders who graduate within 4 years or less with a regular high school diploma. And finally, here is Wethersfield High School's on-track to high school graduation rate for the last 2 years for which data are available. A student is considered on track if they earn at least 6 credits by the end of grade 9. And now I'd like to welcome back Mrs. Distoli.
So while last year we saw some bright spots in our data, overall as a collective group, we're not satisfied with these test scores. Our test scores were overall flat, or we saw some decreases compared to the previous year. Statewide, we saw a slight decrease in ELA performance, a slight increase in the math performance by about 1%, and statistically a no change statewide in science performance. So this evening we've shared with you many different snapshots or moments in time that capture student achievement data. I also do want to remind you tonight that this data reflects just some of the diverse learning opportunities in Wethersfield Public Schools that we provide for our students. We haven't talked about the safe, engaged and supportive communities in each of our schools, the relationships that are formed, athletics, theater productions, musical talent, student awards, community partnerships, and all the other countless ways our students demonstrate learning through innovative, engaging and rigorous tasks. But this is important data we're looking at. So where do we go from here? So the planning for the improvement of our current 2023-24 school year actually started last spring. We look at different data sets all year, and we started to reflect upon our vision and mission and the current strategic plan. As you know, this year we're also in the process of updating our strategic plan. We'll be sharing a draft with the Board of Education soon. So the strategic plan and the vision of a graduate are 2 foundational documents that are used along with ongoing data analysis when designing the district priorities and district improvement plan. You do have a full copy of our district improvement plan attached to this presentation. Our district priorities continue to be empathy, achievement, and equity. While we list them separately, we really do believe that they seamlessly work together. We believe that they're woven together to help us meet individual student needs and help each student meet their greatest potential. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the priorities and the pieces in our district improvement plan related to these priorities to move us forward on achievement. So the first priority is all about relationships. Empathy. Our priority is to build a positive, empathetic, and safe community and increase effective communication. You'll also see that we've developed theory of action statements for each of the 3 priorities. A theory of action is a logical chain of reasoning that explains how this change will lead to improved practices. So for example, we believe that if we explicitly teach social-emotional learning skills and implement restorative practices, then we will build a positive, empathetic, and safe community, and each student will demonstrate growth in both emotional intelligence and academic achievement as collaborators, communicators, and problem solvers. So you will see in our district improvement plan items related to social-emotional learning, relationship building, restorative practices, health and safety practices, and stakeholder climate surveys that will be new this year for students, staff, parents, and caregivers. Priority 2 is achievement. And our theory of action is that if we plan and implement student-centered, authentic learning and assessment practices and continuously use student data to inform personalized instructional decision-making, then all students will demonstrate high levels of growth across skill areas. So within this area, you will see action steps in the district improvement plan related to using data to drive instructional decisions. We've implemented a new data warehouse called EduClimber this year. Evidence-based instructional strategies that provide equitable access to rigorous learning, curriculum revisions, the new elementary math program, the work of exploring a new K-3 reading program and implementing silence of reading, inclusive strategies, Tier 1 strategies for our English language learners and special education students, and strengthening the SRBI in multi-tiered systems of supports at each school. You'll also see that advocating for the state-of-the-art elementary schools to foster 21st learning is also part of our district improvement plan. And priority 3 is equity. We believe that if we grow our individual and collective social consciousness and deliberately identify and address inequities in current policies and practices, then we will be able to holistically close the achievement, opportunity, and readiness gaps while empowering all students to demonstrate growth and success. So action items include professional development for school and district equity teams that focus on equitable opportunities based on school and district data and stakeholder feedback. Community engagement with the Social Justice Coalition, which is town-wide. Parent engagement strategies for diverse families, and selecting materials that reflect diverse cultures and background that represent our school body. There's also a focus on recruiting and hiring diverse educators, as we know representation matters for our students. Improving attendance also continues to be one of our priorities. We say if students aren't in school, students aren't learning. So those are a few of the things we already have in place and actions that we've already taken towards improving our achievement scores. We're really striving for cohesive alignment on our district priorities across all 7 schools. So our district improvement plan is aligned with the superintendent goals, and principals are currently working with their leadership and grade level teams to identify specific achievement goals this year related to assessments and related strategies in their school improvement plans. So coming up at future meetings, principals will be presenting their school improvement plans in November and December to this full Board of Education, and we'll be having updates late winter and early spring through student programs and services. So we really have also tied these 3 priorities to teacher and administrator goals so that we have that cohesion across all levels in our schools within our district. We are committed to continuous improvement, reflecting on our practice, and improving our test scores. Any questions? That was a lot.
Thank you so much, all of you. Any questions from the board? Mr. Raffaelli?
I just had a question on the mental health slide. Thank you all for the presentation, first of all. How come it was just a snapshot of one school? Was the district-wide data not available?
Yeah, so actually that's not data that we collect in a way that's easily mined and collected in a way that we could find, so it really kind of took a lot of labor and time to collect that, but we believe that's pretty reflective of all our schools.
Do we have plans to try to collect that data going forward?
I think it's a really interesting question. I think yes, because as we look at grant funding, the strength of some of our competitive grants has been around data. I don't think we have a path of how we collect that, but yes, I think that's something we see on the rise. It's a concern. We've had other conversations here about that. That is something we want to look more closely at. Yeah.
Mr. Healy.
Following up on my colleague's comment about mental health issues, the 25%, is that one service unit of mental health per student, or is it an amalgam of, let's say, a student requires many units of mental health services, whether it's counseling, referrals, or all? How do you get to a 25% number? Is it out of 100 students, there are 25 units of mental health, and that's how you threw that number together? I'm just trying to get an idea of what 25 means. Does it mean what?
Yeah, so we asked our providers, our school counselors, our social workers, our psychologists. It was a secondary school around. So our students that have mandated services through 504s or IEP plans, that was probably most likely through the year unless they were exited from services. Our general education students would have been doses over time. So there was no number of times of interactions. But the lists provided were regular contacts that these professionals had seen over time. So not meant to be like a one-time conversation or topic, but needed support over time. And we find that number grows throughout the year.
Thank you. Second question. I mentioned this before, but on a broader topic on test scores, math and English, but math in particular, I assume you are working with your colleagues or asking through professional contacts other districts what they're doing to help improve math scores. I made a reference to a story I saw either through some periodical, what they've done in Meriden to dramatically increase math aptitude scores in that school district, which is obviously a little bit larger. I believe they have more English learning students than we do, but they showed marked improvement in a very short period of time. So I was just encouraging you to do that if you already don't doing that, because obviously these scores are what they are, and I think we all share in our concern. Realize there's no easy answer, but if someone has figured out how to build a better mousetrap, we should avail ourselves to that.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Dr. Regan-Lefebvre.
Yes, thank you very much. Obviously, us board members had a sneak peek at some of this raw data a few months ago, but it's really helpful to see it all laid out here in perspective. And obviously, we're all disappointed with these scores, which indicate that a number of our students are not learning enough, which is frustrating. But I agree with Mr. Healy that there's, of course, no easy fix. One thing that I noticed, and this is kind of just my impression, I haven't run the regressions or whatever, is that the schools at the elementary level that actually have the most high-need students and that are the most ethnically diverse are actually some of the strongest in the test scores. Whereas overall, the population of students who are high needs score much lower. So something I'd be curious to think about moving forward, is there something, and this speaks to our three pillars as well, is there something in those two school communities, namely Hanmer and Charles Wright, that is lifting up students, and that's not happening in other schools, perhaps? Is it something cultural, or is it tied, the culture of the school, or is it tied to the size of the school? They're also smaller schools. There could be a lot going on there, but I think if you take just on its own the data on high-need students and how they're performing, it looks like, oh, well, they're largely responsible for pulling this average down. But if you actually break it down by school, I think it's going to look quite different. So I'm curious to know what's going on in those two schools. That means they have different results than the other three. So I'd be curious to know about that.
Yeah, you ask really good questions. I think some of the questions we've also been exploring also. Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Yes, Ms. Granado.
Two questions, and one of them I have forgotten. So if a student comes into town, into our school system, and they have another language, do they have to take the SBACs right away?
Yes.
That's very challenging. Okay. But they do. No matter, there's not a timeline on, you've been in school for 6 months, therefore you're eligible to take the SBACs.
Correct. All students have to take the SBAC, regardless of their language proficiency now. They do that so they could get some what they call baseline data. If you look when we get the state accountability results, you'll see that the state's target for 100 points is 75% of students meeting that proficiency, recognizing that there may be some students that aren't meeting that proficiency. You're exactly right. When we look at our test scores, if our Ls don't have a significant English proficiency, we wouldn't expect them to be performing on grade level in English because that's how they're assessed.
Okay. My other question has to do with both the test scores and our new curriculum. So we're looking up here at test scores, which are kind of flat. And, you know, we have COVID and we have this, but they're flat. And now we've implemented a new math program and perhaps a new reading program with the work from the committee. When do you expect to see improvement? And in other words, what's the testing time on a new curriculum? Do you expect results immediately, in a few years?
Well, we always hope for results immediately, right? That's what we always hope for.
But do you have
But a lot of people will tell you it takes up to 5 years to fully implement a program, differentiate for different learners, be fully versed in that program, especially the elementary level where they have multiple changes across multiple subjects. And so we do recommend waiting several years to look at that trend in data because a first year, you know, we are starting with multiple grades. Students are in different places in different grades, and so they become the scope and sequence has a few years for students to really be embedded within the program, and the skills and the fidelity of the program implementation would be important. So we always like to see results early, but we know that we have to be patient because it could take a few years to see that change.
Because we're really not teaching to the test, but if we get curriculum that aligns with the test, then our students should do better.
Yeah, and we want to make sure, as you saw by our theory of action, that's highly engaging curriculum, especially for today's learners. Every time I have conversations with teachers, the conversation often goes to how students are very different in the classroom, and our learner profile from 5 years ago or 10 years ago is very different. And so that engaging students in that curriculum is really one of the core areas that we're looking to increase rigor and really engage students in that learning.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes, I was just going to say, as you said, the test scores are mostly they are a snapshot. It's how they were on that day, and you do have, as Ms. Granato had mentioned, students who have just come to the building and they have to take the test right away. So I'm especially interested in the growth percentage. I think that that's really important. You know, we know that there are students that don't get to where the state would like them to be or we would like them to be, but it's looking at where they've come from. So that's a very important indication, and that is where I would like to see it to continue to grow and hopefully not drop backwards. But I'm sure that you're doing what you can and engaging in rigor even with children who are not achieving at a high level, because that has a slightly different meaning. It's so that's where I think is especially important, is in the growth.
Absolutely. Yeah, we want all our students to move, and you know, I sometimes have a saying that says, like, everybody's growing, right? From our administrators, we're growing and learning together. Our teachers are growing and learning and doing things differently based upon research and practices we have, and our students. So we want everybody, regardless of where you start, because our students are in different places along that continuum, we really want to look at that growth for all students to ensure they're meeting their fullest potential. Yeah.
Ms. Drew?
I have two questions. One, not only as a board member, but as a parent, I want to know what kind of strategies, because in the beginning when we saw these numbers, they're kind of underwhelming. What kind of strategies, you say you have strategies, what strategies are you trying to implement this year to improve the scores? Like what is being introduced this year that was different from last year so that I can see, you know, the improvement in my children's scores?
Yeah. I'm going to turn it over to Dawn and Christina to talk about a few things, maybe a couple examples.
I think I probably have the one of the easier answers. Is we are implementing an entirely new mathematics curriculum this year. We are doing a lot of professional development around, in fact, all of our professional development to date with K-6 classroom teachers has focused on their readiness to implement this curriculum. and support students along the way. We will continue to do that throughout this year, because one of the most important things when you introduce something new is to make sure that the teachers have what they need in order to do it with fidelity. So that's what we will be working on all year this year. We are also trying to continue our professional development in other areas, reading. We spent a lot of time in the last couple of years on that science of reading PD with teachers to make sure that they were versed in some of that research and some of the shifts in practice that they needed to implement. We are continuing that on a smaller scale this year in collaborative meetings and things like that, not during like full PD days, because we really want to focus on their work in math this year and support them with that. But that will be a focus as we go on and look at those K-3 programs.
So at the secondary level, I can speak to our work around curriculum, rigor, and teacher collaboration. We continue our effort across the secondary grades to update, revise our written curriculum. We don't do that in a vacuum. We're always looking at student data. We're looking at our standards to ensure that we have a guaranteed and viable curriculum to meet all students' needs. So that will continue. Also across the secondary grades, we've begun to engage in professional work around rigor to ensure that we are stretching all students wherever they're starting, right? So that each student has that next place, that next level to go to. And we also continue to support across the secondary grades professional collaboration. We know that when teachers have time to get together to talk in a structured way about teaching and learning, that learning improves. So we're working to support teachers and to protect that time for them for that collaboration.
And then if we were to ask our principals, there's a whole long list. I've seen schedule changes, I've seen relationship blocks. We're doing instructional rounds in the schools to give some feedback, looking at school-wide data. They're doing grade level or content goals with their respective staff, working to track their data towards that. Looking at their data, we have fall, winter, spring assessments, looking at that data, reviewing that data with students, grade level teams, to really kind of drill down to individual students. Attendance teams are going strong. Again, if we don't have students coming and they're chronically absent, then they're not learning. And it's another indicator of risk for our students, so their attendance teams are strong. We have a lot of collaboration going between special education and general education, increase that. We are increasing programmatically our L components to ensure that our students get a rich curriculum opportunity within our L program, but also in the general education population. As we look at 1 in 3 families having another language profile, what does that mean for our instructional work? And our cultural proficiency work, making sure that our students are represented within the work we do in schools for that engagement piece. So that's just a few things, and again, when you hear your principals, there's going to be a bunch of more things. So as some of you have said, it's not one thing. We have to find that ecosystem of a school that uses resources most appropriately to target student need, ensure that all students are learning. And our principals are really thoughtful with systems and goals. When you receive the school improvement plans this year, you actually will have goals from each school on grade level SBAC and some other assessments like STAR or SRI, PSATs, SATs, where they're going to be setting individual goals and working towards that goal as a grade level. So communicating that information down where teachers are part of that action goal setting process.
Thank you. And then I have one more question. In regards to the SBAC for the math, since we implemented the new math program, we had a couple of classrooms. Did we have any anecdotal information in regards to their testing scores versus the other Go Math program?
We can share that, but remember it was only a couple of months.
No,
but yeah.
I mean, look, I'm hoping for this grand change. So
there are a couple. If you take a look at our grade 4 at Charles Wright, that was an entire grade level that piloted. So when you look at that graph compared to the other schools, you can kind of see a pretty stark difference. They were much higher than they were the previous year and seemed to be, I don't want to speak incorrectly, so I want to look at it.
Well, Don's looking that up. One of the things I want to mention about the math program is that it's not just a new math program, it's reimagining how they teach math. So I was trying to think of an analogy, and I don't know if this is a good analogy or not off the top of my head, but it's, if you're going to try the keto, or you're going to try low carb, or you're going to try, high fat, your different diets, your Mediterranean diet, right? It's about doing things very differently and looking for different results. And so that's where the professional development is so important, because it's not just a new math curriculum, it's how they're teaching that is a shift for our teachers and our students, but is so engaging.
Definitely. So that group at Charles Wright that was in 4th grade last year had a significant increase over the 4th grade from the previous year, and performed similarly as other schools across the district for the grade. But the giant leap in scores tells me that the change in practice was highly effective for those students.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Riley.
Just have a comment and a question to the new math program. My 2nd grade daughter seems to have taken to it, so perhaps it's a change of method that's helping her. I also wanted to ask about science, and I thought you had said that grades 5, 8, and 11 were tested. I guess, if that's the case, I guess why isn't every grade tested?
Yeah, that was a decision made by the State Department of Education. I think it's probably at resources, the number of tests. And so they only test it 3 times, which is required by federal accountability, elementary, middle, and high school grades. So it meets the minimum requirements for testing, but not every grade like our math and language arts is.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? You have a question?
Yeah, just if you could, thank you, Mr. Carey. Could you talk about how we utilize our support staff? I know that, this board was very supportive of the addition of math interventionists across all of our schools through grant funding. We also have curriculum specialists at the elementary level. We have reading support at the middle school, one of those positions we lost in an effort to get the additional special ed teacher that we needed at the high school. So can you talk a little bit about how our support staff supports students and classroom teachers?
Yeah. Do you want to start with that one, Don, or do you want me to go?
The role of the math interventionists has been integral in the pilot and launch of our new curriculum. Not only have they been instrumental in writing the curriculum and making sure that every grade level has a comprehensive curriculum document so that they understand what standards they're teaching and what order and how and what their approach is going to be, they're also coaching into classrooms and working with classroom teachers on their new learning as they roll out this new program. Alongside that, they're also servicing students in tiers 2 and 3. So they're working with small groups of students, and they're working with their math tutors to make sure that the students who are really struggling are able to get additional support outside of the classroom in targeted areas that they've identified as gaps. So they have a very large job, and they are doing a phenomenal job at it. I would argue that their principals would tell you that they for sure could not do all of this work right now without them. Our curriculum specialists similarly have been very instrumental in writing this new program, introducing this new program, and rolling out all the professional learning for it. They do instructional coaching with all staff in all curriculum areas throughout the year, whether it be somebody needs help working on something new in math or something new in language arts, or a really new teacher needs some help with how do I organize my classroom so that kids are learning, or how do I manage behavior, or things like that. So they're really instrumental in coaching all staff in all areas. Our reading consultants, similar to our math interventionists, are doing a lot of work on the curriculum side of things as we investigate these new reading programs, and they are supporting students, supporting the tutors, and supporting students. So that group of staff is critical, and without them, it would be very difficult to meet the needs of all students.
At the secondary level, our reading consultants and math interventionists do more of the student servicing. Prior to having math interventionists, our students that most need additional math interventionists were serviced by tutors, which would be our least qualified staff. Our tutors are amazing, but they're not certified. And so we're putting our students that need the most help with staff that are not certified. In the math interventionist model, they oversee tutors, provide lessons, provide direct instruction, professional development, and service the highest need students themselves. So we no longer we have much more supervision with our tutors, but the number of students that we're able to serve that need additional support has increased drastically, and that's true of the secondary level. They also do a lot of diagnostics and collaborate with teachers around improving math scores for individual students, parent communication, but are really in charge of looking at those students that we flag. We look at our data 3 times a year, look at their need, and look at growth as part of that SRBI process. The SRBI process is critical because it's a foundation. Our hope is that we bring them in, we give them an extra dose of SRBI, and they're exited back to general ed. If not, they are collecting data if we're not seeing growth for the referral process to special education. So if we don't have a strong SRBI process in place, we actually see the number of students in special education become inflated. And then there's a cost to special education, right? So our goal of improving Tier 1 and serving students to keep them in Tier 1 is important. And so they have done a lot of work with both Don and Christina about developing those systems, and our principals around developing those systems and meeting student needs in an equity lens also, to ensure that if you're a student at Charles Wright or you're students at Highcrest, when you receive additional services, there's equity across schools also.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Mr. Emmett?
Yes.
Class size.
Thank you, sir. All right, here comes some more data. I'm reading the room. Yes, in the summer, John.
San Francisco. You can do this in science.
This is our annual class size report. As you know, we have an obligation to provide data to the state of Connecticut as our student enrollment count as of October 1st. So first and foremost, heartfelt thanks to Jeff Telke and Suzanne Curtin for doing the yeoman's work of making sure that all of this data is put into the document and is as accurate as possible. And again, this snapshot in time helps us with regard to our budgeting. It talks about where we have popular classes we might want to expand, and where we have other areas where we might see lower numbers, where we might go in a different direction. So we'll get started this evening. So this is our total compared to October 1st of 2022, October 1st of 2023. You see, this year we've seen a decrease. Last year I stood up here and talked about an increase. We saw approximately, I think it was 36 additional kids. This year we've seen the flip side. We've seen the number of students in district decrease, and this really speaks to the work that the SLAM Collaborative has done in talking about Wethersfield being a remarkably stable district. So we're looking at a large number of pre-K students. We're up significantly there. We're down elementary K-6, down very slightly at middle school, and we're down at Wethersfield High School. And we had 2 students at the Transition Academy that aged out last June. So our numbers there are down to 9. In terms of the net change of classroom teachers, we ended up having a wash. We were down 1, at the beginning of the summer, and then we saw our kindergarten numbers at Webb Elementary School for 2 sections go up pretty significantly. At one point in time, early in the summer, we were at 57 for 2 sections, so we've created an additional section there. So these are the elementary class size numbers, and what I want to be clear with you about is take a look at the numbers with the asterisks. So those are students that are in our specialized programs, both our Strive and our ABA LEAP programs. So these students are not counted twice. I want to be clear with you on that. So if you look, let's take, for example, at Hanmer, you see 26 and 24, and then you see 4. You will not see 30 students in a grade 6 classroom or 28. And what typically will happen with these specialized programs, the student will come into mainstream classrooms as based on an IEP and will typically come in with adult support. So overall, as you look at these numbers across the district, I mean, we've seen numbers in the past. I remember when I first started as superintendent, I believe we had a 28 and a 29 over at Highcrest and a grade 5. So the numbers at the elementary level are much more manageable at this point in time. And here are our grade ranges. So what we've seen here in 23-24, with the number of sections of 26 or more, we've dropped pretty significantly from 5 last year down to 2. And we've got a manageable average class size of 19.15 students. I'd like to see it a little bit lower, quite frankly. The lower the better, in my opinion, but we're seeing the number pretty stable. And again, average class size by school, we range between 18.7 to 21.2 across the elementary. And please note at Webb that the preschool is not included. So looking at class sizes, this is class sizes by section at Silas Deane Middle School. We've got several of the social studies classes that are a little higher than I'd like them to be, but manageable. Here's grade 8. And these are the electives. As I say to you every single year, I look at the world language, and we see the world language numbers are robust. That is something that's typical every year. We have a large number of students that want to take world language, so we only have so many sections with so many staff members. And again, with PE Health, one of the things that the middle school did this year is they brought in, we did an internal transfer of a phys ed teacher from the high school down to the middle school. So we have 3 gym teachers at the middle school now as opposed to 2. And again, some of our numbers, band, that's the number for band and chorus, those are numbers we like to see because that's showing that we have more students participating. One of the things that happened at last Thursday's football game was we had our band perform, and we had students from the middle school and elementary school there with the band. It's a great way to kind of seed future marching band students for the Wethersfield Public Schools. And again, our class size ranges. Overall, compared to last year, we're down slightly compared to where we were, about a student per class. And then you can see, as I mentioned, music, which is normal, phys ed, which is normal, have higher class sizes typically. But again, the number of 26 in the core content areas, the number of students of 26 to 29 is 0. And again, we'll get into the high school level. Pretty evenly distributed. a little bit more difficult to read here. Algebra 2 honors at 26 each. Again, I'm pleased to see so many students taking Algebra 2 honors. The class sizes are a little bit large for my liking. And one of the questions I'd have with my friends at the high school, I've only got one section of AP Biology with 6. I'd love to see more students at the high school taking AP Biology. And then when you look at integrated science, we have multiple sections there, very consistent numbers across the board there. One of the fascinating things on this particular slide, take a look at AP Psychology. We've got 5 sections of AP Psychology, and the lowest number of students is 28. So we've got a large number of students taking AP Psychology. That I'm very pleased with.
Is that 12 different classes for international studies?
Yes, it's 2 levels, honors and level 1.
So, okay, so level 1, there's 12 different classes.
Mhm.
There's that many students, that's fantastic.
Yep.
And they go on these great trips.
And then we get into world language here. Now, what typically happens with world language as you get up into the higher, your Spanish 4 and Spanish 5s, you're seeing the numbers decrease. In the past, we've had some issues where I've got 1 or 2 students taking the course. It's difficult to allocate a 0.2 FTE for just a couple of students. One of the things we've done in the past is we've used Edgenuity as a support. Students have the opportunity under the guidance of the teacher to be able to use Edgenuity curriculum to get that last credit. But this is not unusual, very, very typical for a world language at the high school.
It'd be great if we could do French 5. Not that I'm trying to plug it for my daughter, but
Well, that was the last time we had that challenge, it happened to be French. Exactly. So, and you can see Marketing 1. Again, we want to provide our high school students with lots of opportunities. So you look at Marketing 1, we've got 3 sections of Marketing 1, and then I've only got 1 section of Marketing 2, and it's got 8 students. But those are our students that are participating in DECA and, lighting the world on fire with regard to their talent. Family, Consumer Science, Nutrition, and Food Tech, very strong numbers there. Culinary Arts is relatively low. And again, this slide speaks to the CTE and the interest level of our students in the CTE. 3 sections of digital imaging, 2 strong sections of computer animation and architectural engineering. Video production is strong as well. And then health and PE. Are very strong numbers for art foundations with 5 sections. I do want to also bring to your attention, this is one thing we talked about today, and I have to have further conversation with the high school administration. I want to take a look at music theory. I've currently got a music theory section that only has 1 student. We asked the question, what's going on there? We had, I want to say we started the year with 5 or 6 in music theory, and we've had the other students have drop that course to take something else. So we have to look at that one individual and say, is that something we want to continue? So that's something that we'll be having a conversation with the high school administration about. And again, concert, orchestra at 30. An orchestra is something, obviously, you're looking for, more musicians, so that's not something I'm concerned about.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, of course.
Concert choir has a total of 46 students.
Yes.
Is that a huge change since before COVID? Because I just remember when my kids were in school, it took a long time for all of the concert choir kids to get on the stage. There had to be, I don't know, 60 or 70.
Yeah, our music numbers have dropped. COVID hit us exceptionally hard with regard to marching band, with regard to chorus, choral airs. That's one of the reasons why I mentioned having the elementary students work side by side just to develop the interest. We've made some changes in our music program across the district to try and increase the numbers. You know, I had mentioned during the Silas Deane slides, the number of students in band has gone up. So that we're pleased to see. But, you know, when COVID hit, that was one of the things we weren't doing. We weren't playing instruments, or we were playing instruments with, you know, socks on them, or, you know, it's difficult to recapture that. So that's one of the things that we have been committed to, and making sure that our students have the opportunity to participate in music. I can tell you, was recently over at Silas Deane and was watching Emily Caravella test out musical instruments. So we had a couple of students trying out the tuba. I will tell you that when it comes to the music piece right now, I've got tons and tons of percussionists, because it was easy to play percussion. But to find the brass players, the woodwinds, we saw those numbers drop off. So Emily, and along with all of our elementary music teachers, have been really good about getting these instruments into the hands of kids and getting the interest a little bit broadened. So right now, I don't believe we have a tuba player in the band, so we're working on that to bring one forward.
And I wonder if part of that is it's broader than a school, because I know of a lot of students that participate in music, probably in other arts, but in music being unique with COVID, had outside lessons and maybe that kind of dried up too because of for the same reasons. So maybe that's where the issue is. They're changing the way they're thinking about their extracurricular activities.
Well, there certainly are a lot of things that are going on in life now, between sports, between theater, between music. And, you know, for us, I am a staunch supporter of our music program, of our arts programs. It's not all about athletics. It's about the whole child. And, you know, for us to be able to continue to offer these programs for kids, it's a stepping stone for the future. So I think it's very important. So I appreciate your question. Then just to let you know, we have some other class sizes here. The Greater Hartford Academy of the Arts, I currently have 5 students that are participating in the half-day program. So they're at Wethersfield High School for part of the day, and then they go over to the Greater Hartford Academy of the Arts. At the high school, we currently have 44 students in the ELL program. I currently have 20 in the ALS program. I had mentioned earlier during the data presentation the reference to reducing the reading teacher at the middle school so that we could get the special ed teacher at the high school. That is where that high school teacher is, that special ed teacher. So I've got 2 teachers for the class of 20. In addition to that, we have paraprofessional support as well. And then the Bridges program, which used to be known as ADP, that's a program that has 15 students, that also has 2 teachers and encompasses 2 rooms. So here's where we are, and this is kind of a historical perspective. Again, our numbers, if you look back 10 years, our average class size at the high school was 20.01, and this year, 20.04. Remarkably consistent. And looking at the number of classes, class sizes by department, the 30 plus, you've got 2 in social studies and 2 in music. And again, music, not as big a concern. And I do want to talk about the Transition Academy. So the Transition Academy, you can see our numbers. We've gone down to as few as 6 students. That's in district, so those are Wethersfield students. Going back to 16-17 and 17-18, we had an individual student that was tuition bearing from a neighboring town. What ended up happening was that town developed its own Transition Academy. So voila. We, at this point in time, have no tuition-bearing students. But I will tell you from our transition academy, we will transition additional students from Wethersfield High School that have an IEP and that will be eligible for services up to age 22. We do not see these numbers dropping off. If anything, we see them going up in the future. Okay? So that's the conclusion of the data presentation. I am ready for any questions you may have. Again, I think what I'd like to do moving forward, when I look at the numbers and I say, all right, we've lost this number of kids, I'm interested in understanding where they went. Who graduated, who moved, who went to a magnet school, who went to a technical school. So that's one of my next tasks moving forward. So,
I was just going to ask that question. If you had looked into why the difference, where they went.
Yeah, that's something that we'll take a look at. One of the things I wondered too, when I was first looking at the data is, is it a function of the current real estate market in town? I know the real estate market's been tight. Is it an issue of, like in the presentation on the student data presentation, I noticed 22 homeless students. That's significantly higher than what it used to be. When I was Director of Special Services, on average, and I covered McKinney-Vento, the Homeless Act, I typically had between 3 and 5 students. So 22 students is significantly higher than what we've typically seen. So,
Mr. Cassio?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
This enrollment study is what's going to play an important part with our facilities. These numbers are going to reflect the amount of, so to speak, cost it's going to be from the state as well.
Yep.
So did we compare that enrollment study that we did in 2018 to this enrollment study, so our numbers are going to look like they're going to be the same for, the cost?
Yeah, great question, John. I took a look at that data today, and the elementary, remember, we did the 2018 enrollment study, and then we updated the enrollment study prior to going to referendum. So the elementary number that SLAM predicted, our current October 1 enrollment is lower. With regard to our projection at the middle school, it was within, I believe, 2 students, 574, 572. And at the high school, the projection was about 20 higher than where we're currently at. So we're relatively consistent, but the numbers are a little bit higher and more robust in the enrollment projection than what we actually physically see.
Right, because I know that we were looking at how do we get more funding from the state, because the enrollment was down in a couple of our schools and, space-wise and numbers, so that's going to be a challenge.
No doubt.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I just have one
Yes,
question.
Ms. Granado,
It's
sure.
almost it's a curriculum question too, you mentioned ingenuity. We had talked about it a few years ago with French 5, I believe it
Yes.
was, and it kind of solved the problem. I'm looking at the numbers for languages, and the students, I know many they have to take, but they seem to want to keep going with it. Is that what we plan for the future, is to plug them into, I hate to use that way, into Ingenuity? And can we come up with some other languages too then, if we could utilize this program differently?
Yeah, Ingenuity certainly offers options outside of just the current language, but one of the things I would caution with Ingenuity in terms of, or any online learning, you still have to have a connection to an adult. That's the key component here. So, I currently have some students that are working on credit recovery, and they're trying to, just worked with one last week, and focused on trying to graduate, fell behind. My public service announcement about freshmen, making sure they don't fall behind. This was a case where it fell behind and desperately wants to graduate. So he's using a combination of a full load of courses plus Edgenuity. That Edgenuity component, it's got to have that adult support with it, and there's got to be that level of commitment. So often what happens is it's individualized and it's independent, and it becomes challenging, and then the student stops. So for me, the idea of broadening our languages is great. However, I do need to be careful. Like, if I have a student that wants to learn Mandarin, I don't have the adult support at the high school of somebody that speaks Mandarin at this point to be able to support that kid.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Matt?
I was just, not a question, it's just a comment. So we see what's going on in these schools, we see what the schools need, what we want to do. Watching this presentation just made me think about the budget season. We didn't get everything we asked for. I think it's important that the town council also knows what we want to do and what we're trying to do in the schools.
Yep.
A lot of these things were discussed as being on the chopping block, not on the chopping block necessarily, but we floated the idea of having larger classes in certain schools because we didn't have enough money. We floated the idea of not buying new instruments. We floated the idea of not having as many language levels. So watching this just brought me back to the budget cycle and just thinking about what we're trying to do here, and we need to have a board majority that is in agreement with the council majority when it comes to funding these things.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. One of the things we look at, when we're dealing with an allocation, you have to look at the potential, going back to that elementary slide. Are there sections we could conceivably collapse? Yes, there probably are. But again, when you increase the class size, you decrease the amount of attention that these students get. And we see from our test score results, our students still need attention. There's no two ways about it. So for me, professionally, the lower class size is most conducive to student learning. The other piece you mentioned with what we want to do with our schools, we have elementary classroom spaces that are packed to the rafters already. And, fitting, I know, see Christine in the audience, trying to fit 28 or 29 kids in a high-crest classroom with the furniture and all of the learning materials, it is extraordinarily tight. So there's not a lot of extra room to be able to facilitate such large class sizes. But thank you, that's a very good point, Matt.
Dr. Regan-LaFave.
Yeah, just to build on that, I am pleased to see that some of those bubbles that we've been tracking in the elementary schools have graduated out, and it's less of a problem. So I think there were 2 years we were worried about in particular at Highcrest, and now there's only really one where the classes are really big. But I understand that they're also out of space. You don't have the physical space, never mind the teachers. So that's still a little concerning, but I'm glad it is getting better at Hanmer and Highcrest. But also just to echo, I am quite distressed at the huge class sizes for world languages, because I don't understand how in a class of 29 students, you're getting students to all speak, to get feedback on their speaking. It's not, I'm sure every teacher wants smaller classes, I know I do, for myself, but there are certain skills that are difficult to teach in a very large group, and I think learning to speak and communicate in a world language is definitely one of them. So I hope that in the future we can address that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Ms. Drew.
I just wanted to kind of echo Matt in regards to the budget. I'm not going to be here, so I would like to just say that data matters, and I really think that we really need to be data forward when we go before the town council, and we cannot be afraid to bring that data forward and to be a little bit more specific in what goes on, because I think that's something when we're here, we go through the data, but town council doesn't see that data. They don't watch these meetings, and I think we really need to make sure that we bring that forward to them. Their eyes can glaze over, whatever, but I still want them to see it, so.
Thank you.
The implication of the budget is right in front of us, right here.
Right.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
We'll give it a minute to raise the projectors. Great and powerful Oz. Oh, it's broken. Oh, there it is. Moving on to Board of Education meetings held. We already talked about the special Board of Education meeting on 10/3/23. Wethersfield Early Childhood Collaborative, the WEC, 10/9/2023. Ms.
Can I
Granado.
just stop you on that one there? It's like twice that's been in. There's an annual meeting during October, and it's on October 17th,
We'll get it right.
5:30 at the Keenan
We'll get it
Center.
right one day.
We'll get it, but I'll just keep announcing it.
10/17 annual meeting, everyone show up. Community Center, right?
You have to sign up too.
Sign up, show up.
Online.
Excellent. Meeting scheduled, correct council, 10/18/2023 at 11:30 a.m. Student Programs and Services, 10/18/2023 at 6 p.m. Finance and Operations Committee meeting, 10/24/2023 at 6 p.m. There's no unfinished business, public comment. Anyone in the public wishing to make comment, come to the podium, state your name, your address, and you have 5 minutes. Public comment is closed, thank you. There's no executive session, do we have a motion to adjourn? Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Thank you.